Hey, Adrian, do you think the Ratcoon situation helped us in any way?
I believe the Ratcoon got us started. What do you think?
I think that if it's a rat or a raccoon or a squirrel or a giraffe, whatever helps us win 4 games in a row, I'm completely happy to play along.
Yeah, me too.
Hey, this is my friend, Ray.
What's up? This is my friend AD.
Ray is a tour manager who's traveled the world with everyone from the Beastie Boys to the Rolling Stones, engineered artists from Devo to Jane's Addiction to Toni Braxton, and looked after the careers of comics like Jim Gaffigan and Dane Cook.
And AD is a national radio personality, heard on stations across the country, who started off as a major label recording artist that gave me my first job as a tour manager.
I still can't believe that ended well.
Well, we still talk all the time now, and when we do, it's about music and cooking and baseball, especially our beloved New York Mets.
This is Bands, Barbecue, and Baseball.
So, all right, do you think that the Ratcoon skirmish, whatever it was, and it's more or less been acknowledged by everyone without saying that it was a fight, that it was some sort of disagreement, do you think that that was the fire starter for our offense? Do you think that's what got us going?
You know, may very well could have. Frustrations boiling over. I'm sure that Lindor had a lot of frustrations, and whether he was, the instigator or the receiver of, maybe somebody, kind of elbowing him and saying, "Hey, you want to help? You want to help the team at some point?" Who really knows? I mean, if you go back in our history, one of the biggest controversies, or at least situations like this, happened back on picture day in spring training of 1986.
Oh,
that Daryl and Keith took swings at each other while the pictures were being taken.
Allegedly, and we know nothing. This means nothing. This is just something I heard on Twitter. This is just rampant, wild, irresponsible speculation on our part. But the rumor was that perhaps McNeil had said something to Lindor about him not being worth the money they spent on him. And if memory serves correct, that legendary fight between Keith and Darryl Strawberry, it was Keith and Darryl Strawberry, right?
Yes.
It revolved around money. Strawberry made some crack about Keith being overpaid or something like that.
Right. And at that time, I believe, I could be wrong with the numbers, but in relative terms, I believe Keith might have had possibly signed a new deal or an extension or something like that for a grand total of $1.5 million. In relative terms to today's numbers, it's not chump change. At the time, it was just the going rate. But I believe it was either questioning whether someone was coming to play and worth what they were getting, or maybe wasn't giving it their all. And if you're not going to give your all, then maybe you're not worth that $1.5 million. The kind of back and forth and everything. But the bigger point of it was that they took swings at each other. They got that animus and anger built up, and the team played really well for it. So,
yeah.
Maybe just maybe, it was a little bit of a catalyst. Maybe it was a little bit of a kind of like a kick in the butt of like, come on, let's get this going. We're 25 games in already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody has different ways of responding to and resolving conflict as well. Like there's, it depends. If let's just say perhaps, there was something between McNeil and Lindor. I think it all depends. Sometimes you can feel that stuff boiling to a head, and then it comes to a head, and that's probably the best thing for it. You kind of have it out a little bit. There's some sort of a blowout. You wind up, there's all this unspoken stuff. There's all this sort of stuff that you let go, and the resentment builds and builds and builds until finally you get into your conflict, and then you're good for the next, however long it takes for the next one to happen. I mean, you've been on tour with guys and girls in bands in very close quarters and very tense situations. Like you must have seen people that work together, that know each other, that possibly love each other, get into it here and there. And I'm not asking you to spill beans on any of the artists you work with, but it can be par for the course.
I think it's par for the course of being in close proximity. Living on a submarine like we did for years and years is one thing. Like you're really really in tight quarters. Your family. You're forced and pushed together to be together that much. And there are egos. There's people, kind of reaching their boiling points on certain things, or I've seen other people that just, take a stand on the most ridiculous things, and probably just because they're looking for an outlet, they're looking for something to whinge about or moan about. So it doesn't surprise me. The players right now, and if in reality, one, because of COVID and how they've gone through, testing and everything, they are in super close proximity of each other. They're, the Mets, I think the Mets are playing 13 games in a row right now. So I mean, yeah, they're up each other's butts. You're
living literally in each other's pockets, and you have such a great responsibility toward each other. And then those two, the way they're supposed to field their positions together, the way they're supposed to gel and work, and they haven't been bad by any stretch of the imagination. But there's definitely been times since the season started where you look at them and go, those guys haven't quite clicked yet. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like they are unbelievably responsible to one another.
Yeah. If and I'll make a Yankee alliteration, on how much tension there was, between, say, Billy Martin and Reggie Jackson for years, and it boiled over in the dugout, on camera, on TV, etc. There's a great it's a television drama. It's not a documentary by any means, but it's a television drama of, I believe it was maybe 5 or 6 episodes called The Bronx is Burning, which basically is it's a drama / soap opera of the season, like the 77 season, I believe, that Reggie Jackson was the quote unquote straw that stirs the drink of the team.
Wow, I've never heard that expression. The straw that stirs the drink.
That was his own expression. He called himself when he was being interviewed, I think, and they asked, Reggie, what's your position? And I think he deemed himself, he said, I am the straw that stirs the drink. I am here. He came over from Oakland, where he was incredibly successful, where he had won a World Series with them and everything like that. And he signed with New York, and there was a lot of animosity. There was a lot of expectations, especially, and there was personalities that really, really, really clashed.
Well, also it's 1977 and people are still racist as hell. But back then, people were openly racist as hell. Like, I mean,
Sure.
like it boggles my mind how there's so many things that when it comes to just equality overall, whether it's to do with sex or gender or race or color of skin or any of that, there's so many instances where you think we were so much further along than we actually were. Like, you can just go back to the 90s, and from a radio perspective, I hear bits that people were doing back in the 90s. I'm like, you could do that's not only could you, everyone's like, oh, you couldn't get away with that now because it's, like cancel culture. No, that was a terrible thing that person said. It was an awful misogynistic or racist. Like, it's not like you couldn't get away with it now because, everyone's so uptight. It's because that was a terrible thing. And we just that recently, the world was an awful place, and we're getting slowly better. But it's amazing when you don't have to go back that far to find blatant, open examples of prejudice. And I from what I know about this situation, Reggie Jackson was a recipient of some of that.
Yeah, I don't imagine. I mean, just looking at our team from the distance that I watch it from, but paying attention to what's written about them, and they certainly have a lot of outlets in terms of social media, and it's expanded way more than it would have been back in those days. But I don't see necessarily the team having serious issues with each other in certain ways, because if it was, I think over the last maybe 2 seasons, you would have seen players really, busting balls on bullpen guys that just weren't getting it done. Like I would imagine that like Diaz would have been pulled into a closet and hit with things of soap wrapped up in towels and given a whatever that a red zone or whatever. I don't necessarily see that level of animosity, et cetera, like that, but a team has to play like a team, they have to push each other. There are leaders and followers on every team. I love the comparisons that you hear of how Conforto, is really considered like a leader on this team. The way that really Pete Alonso is really considered a leader on the team.
I think that Pete is, I don't know if he's so much a leader because he's so like, gee golly, that I don't know if he's ever going to like be like, everybody get over here. Let's do this. No, pay attention. Let's go. I don't think he's that guy, but I think he is the glue that holds it all together because he is everyone else's cheerleader. Like you wouldn't believe. He is like Mr. Positivity. Why can't we all get along guy? And I think it was really funny because like the one thing that I noted when the skirmish broke out, when the Ratcoon situation happened, like I noticed that, Conforto ran over there super quick and then was like, dah, and walked out. Like he was like, I wasn't concerned about the situation because Conforto wasn't concerned about it. Like whatever it was, he saw it and he went, nah, and walked out like no big. Like, so it was just, like that was, you do kind of look to Conforto a little bit in those situations to do that. But no, I think you're totally right. I think and it was interesting because overall, the Mets have always really, really felt as though they have each other's backs. They really kind of seem to be, and I think that's a vibe that probably starts with people like Pete and carries throughout because it's a good feeling. When you feel supported, you want to support other people. And I think there is, a good vibe between the players and a genuine affection for one another. And I think some of them are actually very good friends. And you can pick up on that. And this was the first time in years I remember hearing of a skirmish between Mets players. Like, I don't think I heard, going all the way back to the World Series, like even when Matt Harvey started just, not showing up and stuff, you never heard any of the players seem to have a problem with him for it.
The issues I think that we were having at those times came more. It was top heavy. I mean, the issues came from the Wilpon ownership and the way that they dealt with things, the way they dealt with even injuries, and everything was cloaked in very suspicious manners. I don't know if you caught any of the general manager Zach Scott's reaction to all of this. He gave a bit of a presser himself, and was going over things. And I really liked what I heard from him about how he didn't call them out on the mat in terms of both players and like really making a determination. He kind of just really more said, listen, like the best way for these things to be handled is to be as transparent as possible, without divulging things that people don't want to have out there. And he drew the correlation as a Northeasterner of straightforwardness being a habit. So I liked what I heard from management and owners and owner in just these last couple of weeks of the typical Met drama silliness that has seemed to go on with the team for years now. It was handled differently by ownership. They would squash certain things. They would leak certain things. They would just handle things differently. And I gotta say, I don't have a problem with how they've been handling it.
Yeah, no, Zach seemed to really, when he came, for those that miss it, he was like, I'm not going to make specific reference to that, and he didn't say something did or did not happen, but he said these are passionate, competitive guys, and, not in reference to this specific incident, but, there's going to be issues like this where everybody wants to win and everybody's passionate and trying hard, and, things are gonna boil over. Like, McNeil, like, is so funny because he is he seems unbelievably nice, but like that guy has really pronounced reactions to stuff. If I had a nickel for every time Gary, Keith, and Ron, like if he popped up or grounded out and they caught him running to first and he was like, sorry, sometimes the audio feed on our game is a little too good, because like he curses himself out every single time something goes vaguely wrong. Like, and so he's like that is a fiery individual. And it's funny, like I really hope they I don't know, is he married or does he have a fiance? I don't know. I think it's his wife, but like I would love it if someone interviewed him once and be like, is he like that when he, I don't know, drops a dish or something? Like he's like, oh, I'm a worthless sack of crap. I'm never going to do anything in life. Oh, I suck.
Yeah, and man, for players that have come up through our organization and are now, they're literally starters, but they're being asked to be as flexible as possible with where they might play, or where things are, in comparison to, say, an established player that has now come over from another team into the New York stew, into the bright lights in New York. I think that's the one element I think that always has to be mentioned in some way somehow, because playing in New York is not like playing in Kansas City. It is not like playing in Pittsburgh. Just the amount of coverage, the amount of people following you, the fans themselves, and just how obviously dedicated and knowledgeable they are, etc. And how sometimes they're really not willing to give. They're very harsh.
I think it was more than one of the new players. They're like, how are you finding New York? And they're like, well, fans I hear are the most, are the best in baseball. And, they've all followed me on Twitter immediately. And they all, but one thing they said, like, besides the fact that there's a lot of them and they're very passionate, I've heard a couple of them say they're more knowledgeable about the nuts and bolts of baseball, like, than other fans. Like, they get deeper into it. They understand, they really pay attention. They devour every piece of information on baseball they can find. And there's a whole bunch of, I don't know if I'd say highly educated, but, deeply self-educated Mets fans out there that are going to have strong opinions on things they have never actually done before, but actually have a pretty good base of knowledge of how baseball works compared to other fan bases.
Oh, I mean, just in terms of reading the Twitter machine after Luis Rojas brought in Diaz the other night into a situation that, literally hands down, every single fan's reaction was like, what are you bringing him in there for? There's not a situation he should be brought in. And you got 13 games coming up where you've already used him and you're going to need him. They're already thinking, they're thinking ahead. They're thinking ahead in the schedule. They think like general managers.
Yeah.
They really do.
Well, I remember during the game getting a text from you being like, I'm disgusted. That is incredibly poor pen management.
Yeah. I mean, with Familia as well as he has been doing right now.
By the way, Familia for me has been the surprise of the season, because like he was that guy that everybody, he's for the Mets, he's that anchor. He was that ninth inning assassin in 2015. Like he was that guy that is just unbelievably reliable guy, and then he wasn't
until the playoffs started.
Yeah. But I mean, and then when he came back from the A's, it was just like, oh, this is not good. You know what I mean? Like this is not going to be okay. And then this season, he really seems to have. He is much better than I expected him to be.
I agree that I've got to give him credit for being better than I was hoping. I unfortunately, the skeptic in me is waiting for the other shoe to fall, or for when it's in huge situations that we'll hopefully be in later in the season. Yeah. I want to see him do it when it is so on the line. Yeah. And it makes me it just harkens back to Benitez to me all over again. Our closer situation has been where we've had really, really, really great closers who when it came down to it, it certainly wasn't a Mariano kind of situation where you knew it was going to get handled. So I'm a little bit of a skeptic on Familia, on Baby Huey, as my wife calls him. I like what I'm seeing from him. I'm happy for him. He's fulfilling a role. It's now the important thing of putting these guys into their roles. Trevor May closing out the game tonight, I thought was a very, very smart idea.
And also, like I kind of saw him rising to the occasion. He did a great job, and he had I think he just had that one. Him and Loop had like a back-to-back shaky outing, and everyone went, "Oh no, this is our pen." Like this is there was a pen. It was maybe the first time that we saw May and Loop back to back, and May got hit pretty bad, and then Loop hit a batter, and then we were just like, oh no, this is the same all over again. As the pen goes, we go. But then that seemed to be a hiccup at the beginning, and both of those guys seem pretty reliable at the moment.
Same thing with Barnes. I mean, Barnes' first action went bad, and yet now his last couple of performances, his last couple of appearances have been good, and it's everyone's going to have those just days. Peterson had his yips. And we fortunately worked around it. Mm-hmm. And then they basically had a game today where it was a bullpen game, meaning that everybody was going to contribute some way, somehow in this game, no matter what was going to happen, because that is a total setup for tomorrow with DeGrom coming back in, where the hope is that he's going to go deep in the game so that the bullpen can rest, because we are in a stretch right now where they really need to get everybody in, but they also need to get their rest.
I mean, they do need to get their rest, but at the same time, Jacob DeGrom is coming, he was resting for a reason. He had some trouble, and it's just like sort of like MacGyvering a pitching lineup in the last couple of games was really cool, and it worked, but I just hope it doesn't put too much pressure on DeGrom to go like, hey, can you definitely have 8 in you, right? Because we all know Diaz is only doing 1. You know what I mean? It's just like,
well, if let's put it this way: if Jacob could be Jacob, and even just a normal Jacob game, not the amazing. I mean, game,
not a Koufaxian outing, just a Jacob DeGrom
exactly, outing. just a regular DeGrom outing. Hopefully, the way the bats are right now, except for Dom, unfortunately.
Yeah.
If the way they are right now, like I'd like to see them score these couple of runs today. I'd like to see the aggressiveness. I like how our bench, our depth, our depth has really been a benefit.
I mean, for those that haven't caught it, like during the entirety of the offseason, Ray was vociferously tweeting anyone that would listen, up to including Mets ownership and management, saying like, I don't understand why we just have to get McCann. Why can't we get why can't we get Realmuto and McCann? This is a thing that we must do. And everyone was like, you're insane. You're like, depth. And you were right.
Depth.
It's depth that got us there. It's the bench mob that got us there. And the VRs, the PRs, and the Nitos, they're getting it done. And it means when you lose a Nimmo, when you lose a JD Davis, when you lose a reliable on base machine, you're not going to a heart attack. You're going to someone where I can't wait to see this, where there's, I honestly feel like there's going to be some competition for some positions sometimes. The bench mob has done so well, and I think that's healthy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you cannot have enough pitching, and you can't have enough depth. And there was a great article today that I was reading about Chris Bryant, the Cubs third baseman, who basically is he's being tendered to the point of it doesn't look like the Cubs are going to re-sign him, or not necessarily that he's going to re-sign with them. And so the thought is that he has quite possibly 13 different landing sites right now during the season where they might possibly trade him, and he's having he's having, I wouldn't call it a career year, but he's having certainly one of his really good years. So things are falling into place for him right now to be, to be mentioned by anybody of who and where he should go. I think the Yankees are doing the same exact thing with a couple of different pitchers like Scherzer, like Max Scherzer, and there's a couple of high end pitchers that. The Yankee fans, at least, are really, really pressing and pushing on. So there's a couple of very interesting things that will develop probably just in the next month or so, leading up to the trading deadline. That this is going to be actually a very interesting season. So and then players.
So do you think that everyone has? We haven't felt secure at the hot corner since David Wright went away. Like that has been the giant question mark around the Mets lineup. With first base, you knew that eventually we were going to get to Pete Alonso and or Dom Smith. You knew what was going to be happening at first base. You had a sense of what was happening in the infield, but the stability of the third base position it's just been an utter crapshoot since David Wright stopped being a thing. Do you think that we should? Do you think that we continue to give a JD Davis a chance to develop? Or initially, I would have told you we were going to trade for Matt or go after Matt Chapman, but with the surprise season that the Oakland A's are having, I don't think they're letting him go anywhere anytime soon. So Bryant is now the obvious target.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think probably the eye-opening that maybe Steve Cohen's having as being now in complete management, complete ownership, and just seeing how things are going, it would not surprise me for the Mets if they're especially over 500 in the hunt in the division, being talked about the way they are. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't necessarily do it unless the asking price was just too much. So I think it's something we definitely need to keep our not only our eye on, but it would be amazing to see how wise and aggressive, Sandy and Zach might be when we're put in the position of what do we need? Okay, go get it. That would be very, very interesting. And then that really circles back to Lindor and the fact that he's hopefully maybe now finding his way. It bodes really well. His defense hasn't been a thought or a question. Now that his offense
until he started hitting, and then he was like, "Oops, Butterfingers." Did you see him shovel that? Like there were a couple today, and then that high throw to Alonso where he was like, "Thank you." You're like it's good having someone who's a tree at first base. They can reach up and get throws like that one. And there's one thing about that, and you reminded me exactly of something that I was thinking about before, and it has to do with Pete. And as fantastic as his defense is coming along, I'll super credit to him that he worked on his defense. It's very obvious that he has. He has been doing something that's been driving me crazy and making me kind of fearful for him. And if you've been watching a lot of the games, you'll notice that he has a tendency to fall back off of first base into foul territory when receiving a ball. And it's come in a very, very close proximity to the runner several times. There was a play today, the exact play you were talking about with Lindor's throw that Pete basically made a fantastic catch. But if you notice, the momentum of his body is falling backwards towards the foul territory. So one, he's not going onto the field closer to the ball and shortening the distance of that throw. He's falling backwards, making the distance of the throw longer, which is giving the runner more of a chance and opportunity to reach base with a slightly bit more time. And he's getting in very, very close proximity of runners where I'm very, very fearful that somebody is just going to steamroll into him, not even necessarily intentionally or on purpose, but he's physically put himself in a position. And I believe Keith actually might have pointed it out one or two times as well, that it's just a
a bad habit to be getting into. All of your momentum and all of your everything should be going towards shortstop, going towards second base, shortening the distance of those throws. And so you reminded me of that just as you were talking about it. That's one aspect of Pete's game that I've been like, oh God, I don't want to watch him do that again.
Yeah, no, I it's one of those things where you really hope someone mentions it to him, because like Pete seems to be that guy who is, completely open to suggestion. I think he's like, I want to be the best. I know I'm not the best. I know, I might have gotten way better, but he's never going to be a guy who I think sits on his laurels. So if someone says, hey, you should try not doing that, I bet you he would run with it. He seems, one of the things that I think makes Pete so powerful is that he seems very, very coachable. He seems very, very sort of open to being told how to improve the things where he's not the strongest, and he's got enough humility to recognize that doesn't make him less of a baseball player, and he just wants to be more of a baseball player all the time. I have heard Keith mention something like that, and it always makes me wonder about Keith Hernandez, and just the insight that he seems to get watching all these games, and the insight that he has by, in my humble opinion, being the greatest defensive first baseman in history, I think. Do you think? I mean, I'll bear in mind, I'm a Mets fan. I know nothing about it. It's so funny because I'm in radio. For those that don't know, I'm in radio. This is what I do. And when I talk about the Mets, everyone's like, you should do sports radio. I'm like, no, I really don't know anything about sports. They're like, what do you mean you don't know anything about sports? You can talk about the Mets till the cows come home. And I was just like, right. They're like, you could just do baseball. I was like, no, I don't know anything about the Mets and the teams that the Mets, all I know is the Mets and the teams that the Mets have played. Beyond that, who knows? Quite frankly, who cares? So in my mind, Keith Hernandez is the greatest defensive first baseman in history. But there's probably plenty out there that are great that I haven't seen.
No, he's got a Hall of Fame level defensive numbers in terms of percentages and his defensive numbers are completely Hall of Fame worthy. He's Hall of Fame worthy just in terms of winning the MVP in '79, the co-MVP that he won with Willie Stargell, which was completely well deserved. And his philosophy on the field was revolutionary. He did things that hadn't really been done like that before, and mostly in terms of his work and assistance in double plays, working on bunted balls, coming in and literally fielding his position to the point of making defensive outs at second base part of the initiation of a double play ball that almost no other first baseman you would have necessarily done it that way. He was revolutionary and prolific in his defense. So just on that alone, he absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame.
But I mean, he absolutely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Like, for me, this is a guy who should be, like, he's in the Mets Hall of Fame. He's now going to be in the Cardinals Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame. And when he decides to hang it up, if not sooner, he should be in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame. It's so funny because people always say to me, like, oh, would you like to get to know, some of the Mets? Like, if you got a chance to go into the dugout, would you want to do that? No, absolutely not. Under no circumstances. There's nothing left magical for me in music. It was my favorite thing ever. And now I get annoyed when I have to do an interview with the lead singer of my favorite band because I don't have time in the day. I never want that to happen. Sorry, guys who call it. If you're a band I've interviewed, I really like talking to you, but I don't have the time. But I never want that magic to disappear from baseball. So I never want familiarity with players. I don't want to see how the baseball sausage is made. But if there was an opportunity to meet like Gary, Keith, and Ron, or anyone that worked with SNY, just as broadcasters, it's so funny because he is such an incredible baseball player and such an incredible baseball guy. But I put Keith Hernandez right up there with folks like Howard Stern in terms of his chops as a broadcaster and his ability to entertain and inform just by being himself. So I think he should be I think he should be in the Broadcasting Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame. He is in the Mets Hall of Fame, and he's going to be in the Cardinals Hall of Fame. That guy is, the best at everything he does.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason he's so good at it is his eye for detail and be able to, basically bring his knowledge base over to it in a way. Keith certainly is a unique specimen in terms of how he speaks, what he says, the lack of inhibition in how and what he talks about.
It's amazing that it's an amazing. Like, I have to imagine that if any kind of like fan ran into Lindor post game getting autographs or something like that, they're like, I guarantee you, someone after having heard Keith say, like, don't let your fanny fly out on your next at bat.
Yeah,
your fanny's flying out.
There's a lot of parallels that I always make about baseball and the music business, and the travel and the hotels and the dealing with fans and critics, etc. My experience of being around ball players, during their course of their careers, and then literally like their post careers, which is a mixed bag. Not every former player does become a broadcaster and become an incredibly successful, really good broadcaster. My experience with meeting and talking to them and everything, there's a gruffness to the ball players, and I think it's actually a generational vibe in terms of the players back in the day, and this is only maybe in the last 20, 30 years that there's been any kind of real change to their levels of compensation, and it being more realistic and reasonable in terms of their life savings and everything. A lot of them I found to be kind of really gruff, and they deal well with baseball people. Mm-hmm. They don't necessarily have the chops of normal life, because they played since they were in, call it junior high school, went straight into programs, straight into college, straight into minor leagues, into the fishbowl that is the major leagues. And so like their interactions with normal people in normal life situations hasn't necessarily prepared them for anything else.
Yeah, and that's the best example, and obviously this is an extreme example, but the best example I can think of in that perspective, in that respect, would be Lenny Dykstra famously avoiding reading as much as he could growing up because he was worried it would damage his eyes and hurt his ability to see the ball. Yeah.
It certainly damaged his ability to discern between right and wrong in a couple of things. So, yeah.
What do you mean? Like, it's not normal to hire a PI to blackmail umpires?
Well, okay, that's normal. I stand corrected.
Yeah.
I'm just making I would say an enlightened criticism of what I've seen of players, and I've had some great circumstances where not sitting around
literally
outside the stadium as they're going to their cars trying to get an autograph, or things like that, where that's a lot of their interaction with the fans. Touring with bands, I spent a lot of times where we were staying at the same hotel that the teams would stay at when they were coming in. So I've had several different run-ins and interactions with players and teams and everything in more of a casual environment and more of their normal life environment. And I could say, but the difference between, say, a band member or an artist in that same scenario and situation, the band and artists certainly have a lot more leeway to do what they want to do, and have fun with the fans, interact. I don't see a lot of players drinking heavily with fans at this point, like after a night game in some town. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Like, who have you spent time socially with? Because I've only spent time socially with one professional baseball player, and it's a guy with, I think, 4 World Series wins, and it was one of the wildest nights of my freaking life. But who have you spent time with?
Well, in terms of as a tour manager, and dealing with, say, artist relations, where I've brought a lot of artists to games where they're, kind of in a promotional role or an artist relations role, so we've been brought in, and they're asked to make a little, kind of a announcement that'll play during the game, or take some pictures with the team, and we've actually gone into the clubhouse, and sat down and went into the manager's office and sat. And I've actually had that interaction with a couple of different players that I didn't expect to have interactions with. I had a great hang with Ryan Howard, the first baseman of the Phillies, who's now since retired. But I had a fantastic long time conversation with Ryan, not about a little bit about baseball, but about several other things. And then I actually was staying in a hotel years and years.
Well,
years
hold
ago.
on. What did you talk about? You're yada yadaing the best part.
Oh, I apologize. I didn't mean to yada yada. Well, it started off in terms of okay, we'll talk some baseball, because that's a common conversation, but it certainly would certainly delve into music and what kind of things they were into and listening, and then it would kind of divert into, hey, so what do you do for fun when you can have fun? And very personalized and very personal, kind of interactions and everything. And actually, I got to admit, very, very fun, self-defacing kind of things, and a little ball busting kind of things. It was like good interactions with some good people. And then I've seen others that you can tell they don't necessarily have interpersonal skills. I would say, not beyond being able to talk to an interviewer and give the stock answer to a question that they're asked. They're kind of, some of them don't really know how to really, just kind of react, I guess, on an interpersonal level. But then again, this whole social media thing in the last several years has kind of forced the guys, the personalities, to kind of come out. Marcus Stroman has been surprising the heck out of me. As I read through his Twitters and everything like that, he's very, very open, very, very, very approachable, very, and easy. Seems easy to go from topic to topic, and wears his heart on his sleeve. It's been actually very interesting.
You always know what Marcus Stroman is thinking. You can see it in his face, and you can see it in his Twitter feed. It's the difference, like we were saying, between him and DeGrom. DeGrom is like the Leonardo DiCaprio of the pitching world. Nobody really knows what that guy's doing, and it makes him that much more believable when you see him on screen. It's not a distraction because he hasn't done a million interviews. He hasn't been on Ellen or the Tonight Show or something stupid like that for the most part. He is he doesn't let you know much, so that when he gets up on screen, you believe that he really is, fighting a bear, and you buy it. So it's you buy it. And I think DeGrom's the same way. That I think he might have Twitter, but I think the last time he tweeted might have been about late 2016 or something like that, and it was something that he got paid to do. Hey, I will be at this Ford dealership signing autographs. Cannot wait to see you. Thanks. Right. I think that was it. But he's got this incredible poker face, but Stroman doesn't. Stroman, know how he's feeling. Yeah, and I think batters, sadly, that translates into batters knowing when they've got the best of him. But the flip side of that is when he's looking confident, batters have to just walk up and be like, ah, crap, he's got it today. I'm gonna fly out or pop up.
And then there's other times like I was with a band and we were in Fresno, California. And if you've ever been to Fresno, California, you know exactly what I mean when I say Fresno, California. Yes. But I was sitting in the lobby bar at this hotel in Fresno, and for no reason whatsoever, or insignificantly why he was there for another reason, but Marquise Grissom, the legendary center fielder who, I mean, he played for everybody. He just literally was, came in and sat down, and I was like, aren't you Marquise Grissom? And he's like, yeah. And we wound up sitting there and have a drink together and talked at length about all these kind of things. And it was an awesome casual hang. And in fact, he got to bust my balls and I got to bust his balls because, obviously the first thing I told him was how big of a Mets fan I was and how much he had killed us for years when he was on the Expos and when he was on the Dodgers and the Giants. And we were talking, and he totally reminded me of the fact that he was on the Braves, and he was on a Braves team that I think that's where he actually won. He was on the team that won the World Series, and he was on a team that had kicked the crap out of the Mets. And I'm sitting there talking to him. I'm like, oh my God, I almost totally forgot that you were on the Braves and that you kicked the living crap out of us and that you won a World Series with it. And it was an awesome casual experience. And the only thing I can say about the fact that being in the music business and traveling parallel to all these things is that every once in a while I've gotten to have these great casual interactions with ball players, and they're cut from a different cloth. It's they're a certain breed.
I mean, it's interesting. Go on.
I was going to say, same way that comedians are completely cut from a different cloth. Like they're of a different kind. Ball players are completely cut from a different cloth, and just come at things a different way.
It's interesting what you say about people being smart, because like Keith will say it over and over again. And like Keith is obviously really, really intelligent guy, but he said it so many times where he's like, you can be good and be a dummy. But he was like, you'll find most of the great players, there is a level of intellect there that he was like the greats. He was saying to be great, you got to be smart. You're like, being a knuckle dragger with great instincts is only going to get you so far. But if you are great, you're a smart guy. Like, so it's interesting because Keith always like equates intellect with success in baseball.
Yep. Well, I mean, it also is that recall factor. I mean, you could ask Keith right now, like, okay, so I remember you were playing in a game. It wasn't 86. It wasn't the World Series year, but it was in 85. You'd been now with the Mets for a while, and you guys were really coming in, and you guys played this certain game against Cubs, and he can practically recall the entire pitching sequence that this one pitcher had thrown at him in the 3 at-bats that he had against him, because like that kind of recall and that kind of attention to detail is a heightened sense of intellect without a doubt.
And he was high most of the time.
And he was high as a kite.
I don't know. I don't think. I know he smoked cigarettes in game. I don't know if he ever looked at. I don't know if he ever got bombed during the games.
If anyone doesn't understand or know that greenies, amphetamines,
right?
They were so prevalent in all of baseball for years that when the whole controversy about PEDs and all this stuff came to light, and they were talking about what they were going to do about it, one of the last things they were going to deal with were greenies, because I mean, amphetamines for years was what moved trucks across this country.
Yeah.
It's what made these guys able to play a night game and get it.
Holy crap. No, go on. Like, no, and yeah, no, to get over jet lag, it was perfectly acceptable to do a whole bunch of amphetamines. You ever see that, the documentary No about Doc Ellis pitching a no-hitter while he was high on acid? If anybody's, if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. But he goes into great depth about the amount of amphetamines he used to be on every single time he pitched.
Yeah, amphetamines were almost it's a different thing than those aren't drugs, they're amphetamines. What are you talking about?
You may or may not remember this, but like there was Ray, for those that are new to the podcast, the way we got to know each other was he was an engineer at a place where a band I was in made a record, and then he became our tour manager and sound man. And I had a pretty bulletproof voice. I could get through. I could count the number of times I lost my voice in a show on one hand. I might not have been awesome every single night, but the actual losing of my voice was not ever really a problem. But there was one occasion, and I don't remember where we were playing, and I don't remember where we were on our way from, but I was kind of new to America, and I have really bad hay fever, and which can translate into asthma, and my inhaler had run out. And so I was just like, this is not awesome. And we're in a truck stop, and I see these things by the front table, and it's it says bronchulator, opens you up, is great for asthma. I was like, cool, I'll just, take a couple of these. And little did I know that was truck stop speed. I genuinely thought it was for people with asthma. And that night was one of the very few nights I lost my voice. I think it probably just dehydrated the hell out of me. And I went to sing and nothing came out. And I was like, well, that's peculiar. That's never happened to me before. That had never, at that point, that had never happened to me before. And I think the next time I was on death's door because I was super sick, but it had never, I've been rough, I've been ropey, but I never had it where I went to sing and nothing came out. And I was like, what the hell is that? And then I was going back through my mind. I was like, what did I do different? What's what's wrong with me? I don't feel sick. I was like, and I mentioned to someone, did you take anything? Did you take, you're a guy in a band. Did you take anything? I was like, well, I just took some asthma medication. They're like, well, what asthma medication? I was like, these things. So they're like, that's truck stop speed. I was like, what? I was like, but it says it's a bronchulator. They're like, that's speed. Don't take that. Unless that's what you want, if that's what you want to do, fine. But if not, that's what we call in the business, a $7 cup of coffee. I was like, okay, all right, never mind.
Yeah, that was one of those where I really thought I was going to have to jump up on stage and finish the show for you. So.
But yeah, where were we going with this? Keith is smart. Keith did it while he was high. It was just one of the many ways Keith Hernandez is better than me, because the one time I accidentally took amphetamines, it all went to hell.
Well, anyway, going full circle around of the Mets, their success in this last week, the drama, the ups and downs that we've gone through in this entire week, and the mere fact that you and I are recording this tonight on a Saturday night, right after the game ended, because tomorrow is Mother's Day. Happy Mothers to the tens of fans that we have on this podcast. Maybe one or two of them are mothers. Happy Mother's Day to those.
Have you seen that? Have you seen that meme that's floating around the internet? And it's amazing that no one ever got to this before, but it had this is what 10 centimeters of dilation looks like, and it was a circle with something being put through it, and it was just don't skimp on Mother's Day.
It's a good point. I mean, it ain't wrong. But no, the mere fact that we decided to record the podcast tonight instead of our normal Sunday night recap of everything. This has been a very interesting week. It has shown hopefully a bit more of the scruffiness that I'm hoping the team has in games where yes, we've won a couple of series now. We split with the Cards, which I consider a victory after how we were doing. We've just taken the first two against the Diamondbacks. We've got a couple of interesting things coming up where this is their time now to really establish what kind of team they're going to be, and that in turn hopefully is going to really determine to Sandy, Zach, and Steve about whether they need to make any changes. I know the change. I know the release of Chillin Davis seemed like a hard pill to swallow for everybody. But hey, they played better after that. It woke everybody up a bit. That had
there is some fire on the field now that was not there before, and maybe it was firing Chili Davis, maybe it was the altercation or the Ratcoon situation between Lindor and McNeil, but there is some fire on the field now that perhaps wasn't there before, and it like you see it, and a huge part of that is obviously Lindor coming to life. To see we haven't really gotten a chance to see him be aggressive on the bases because he hasn't gotten on base, but now he's messing with the program. He's exactly what we wished we had when Kansas City took up from us in 2015, because they played that aggressive baseball that we could not keep up with, that was going to put us off balance. And when Lindor, tonight when Lindor, when the throw went past second and he came home, he didn't go to third, he came home, and they didn't even bother throwing because he was too far out by that time. By the time they realized what was happening, they're like, oh crap. So there's some fire on the field that, a big part of it is Lindor actually getting on the bases, and I think that's some inspiring stuff. And maybe it was firing Chili Davis, and maybe it was the altercation, the Ratcoon altercation. However, I thought was amazing. They fired Chili Davis, and a big part of it was we want to be an analytics team moving forward. We've got a hard on for everything that the Dodgers have done, and we want to be like the Dodgers. And they're very analytics driven, and Chili's an old school guy, and he's good and all that. And Cuddlebaum came up, and they're like, so what's going to be your approach? How do you intend to fix this? And he's like, well, the main thing is confidence. Didn't mention numbers, analytics, whipping out the iPad between at bats. He's like, the main thing is confidence. When you're at this level, you can hit. I just have to give them the confidence to go out there and do it. I was like, great. Glad we've got our analytics guy in place. Yeah, the main thing, I got to pump him up and give him some confidence.
Well, having been a professional ball player ever myself, it's hard for me to sit and hardcore criticize all the tiniest bits of things, but there is something to be said about inspiring somebody, motivating somebody, and if that has been lax, or that hasn't been to management's satisfaction, it's very true that Chillin was a hire by the previous administration. He was a hire by the previous ownership and management. Anybody, when somebody new comes in, they have to kind of feel a bit like as part of the old guard. And if a new general manager comes in, if a new owner comes in, a lot of times they will clean house, or they'll put people on notice of listen, we're going to maintain for right now, but you weren't hired by me. I might want to take this in a different direction, which is completely their right to do. I think the players is a perfect example would be that Pete said he got very upset that Chili had gotten fired and everything like that. He may very well have led to Chili's getting fired by this whole ridiculous
Donnie Stevenson.
Yeah, Donnie Stevenson thing. He might have literally said, we'll play it off to that. That might have showed up Chili and might have helped get him fired. So you know what? What you do, what you say, these have ramifications. I'll make another parallel comparison. The Angels released or designated for assignment Albert Pujols in the last year of his 10-year contract, where he's he's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He's a legend in the game. But is he holding the team back in terms of his production right now, or the fact that they signed him to a 10-year deal, knowing that 10-year deal was going to come in his age 41, 42 years?
Well, by the way, there's plenty of sports agents around the league that'll be like, sure, and the rest, because I guess like they're like, sure, yeah, Pujols is really 41, just like Dikembe Mutombo was 39 when he was playing for the Rockets.
Okay, but his longevity numbers, et cetera, like that, he's 33 home runs away from reaching the 700 home run plateau. That used to be a draw of fans to the stadium for games. Right now, you're dealing with limited accesses and limited capacities. Mm-hmm. So, it's a very interesting question about whether the Angels they're really on the hook for letting him finish out what he was doing, or cutting bait and saying, here, I pay you to go away. And yes, you've done what you've done. Thank you very much. Tip your hat. We're done with this. And I've got a split emotions about it. I know that Mike Trout got very, very emotional about it, because literally Pujols has been on that team since he was literally a kid and coming up and joined the team. So that also, I think, shows a player like Trout, when you are old, they will drop you like a bad habit. If you're not producing. Well,
I haven't been following it closely enough, but I have to assume, because when that happened, my mind was completely boggled, and I was like, okay, so they still have to pay him out minus what any other team gives him. Like, he could take league minimum and go play somewhere, like $500,000, and they'd still be on the hook for what's his salary yearly? $25 million or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah, so it's around $25 million. So they still have to pay him $25 million. So fiscally, it is obviously not the best move to designate him for assignment. What you want to do is trade him, and they're on the hook for his salary, so there's no financial benefit to letting him go. And I have to assume they've got a big move to follow that up, because I can't see the benefit to getting rid of a hero in their last season, and still having to pay for them, unless you've got something awesome to fill that spot.
Well, I know. I have a lot of Angel friends out here in the desert in Palm Springs that have all wanted to move on from him for actually the last couple of years, because the 10 years that the 11 years he was with the Cardinals and putting up Hall of Fame numbers were not exactly matched with these last 10 years that he did with the Angels. So,
and why would they be? You come up,
you paid for, right? Yeah. I'm not paying for you the player you were. I'm paying you for the player you are now. But as you just said, they're paying him, say, $25 million to not be in a team. That shows you how much value there is to every single roster position that there is. If you've only got 26, positions to fill, it's worth paying someone $25 million to not jam up, to not clog up one of those positions, so that you can put somebody in that will actually perform to the level you need and be a cog in the wheel. Yeah. It's just a shame that, as a Hall of Famer is coming to the end of his career, you're not in control of when that career will end. If you can't catch up with the fastball anymore, we just saw another retirement, Jay Bruce, just 2 weeks ago from the Yankees at 34 years old, not 42 years old. At 34 years old, Jay Bruce is not able to catch up with the current 98 mile per hour standard fastball, and he said, "You know what? I'm going to hang it up now, because I'm batting 198. I'm not hitting my weight. I can't do it. So in terms of a Pujols coming to the end of his career, he's on the doorstep of some very, very cool numbers that will hopefully cement him. He's already cemented in terms of his lifetime numbers, but you want to say that you finished, you finished with your best and that you could. So I picture that he's going to wind up signing with a team, most potentially an American League team, but not one that's in the running for anything necessarily, but that he can get his at bats in, that he can try for 33 more home runs. I don't see a team that's in the hunt, in the serious hunt, going for him, because unless he can prove that he can turn up to another level and go for it right now and really produce, he's gonna go into that wave your cap kind of era of the final year or so of his career, if he can even get that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you'd have to imagine that he would get to go somewhere, and I think everybody hopes it's the Cardinals. I think he probably hopes it's the Cardinals, and I'm sure there's Cardinals fans that would want that to happen. But
he doesn't want to. He said that he doesn't want to play part time.
He wants to play every day. Yeah,
right. So it wouldn't be the Cardinals, because
they have
Major League Baseball, like idiots, like they normally do, they dropped the ball of making a decision in this offseason about whether there was going to be a DH or not.
Yeah.
Continuing from last year, had they made the decision of like the inevitability of the DH is coming, that under COVID we want to protect people as much as possible. So yes, we're going to initiate the universal DH.
The fact that
there's a reason for it.
I mean, and we've talked about this before, but it's infuriating, because the fact that they had to make off-season moves, not knowing that, speculating that it was going to happen, knowing that it almost definitely was going to happen, but not knowing if it was this season or next season. This is people's lives and careers and millions upon millions of dollars on the line. And because, they can't get off the proverbial pot, so to speak, and decide whether or not we're going to have universal DH, that was like, it just made no sense to me. And I know there's reasons that I don't understand as a fan looking from a distance, but that one I think was a head scratcher for everyone, and still is. Like, that's just like, what the hell are you doing? You're really messing with the program.
Unfortunately, baseball has done that over and over and over again between the Players Association and the baseball, which is a harbinger of doom for next season and this new collective bargaining agreement that they're going to have to do, because they can't get their collective crap together or look at things in the benefit of the game and the benefit of the fans, the benefit of the people who follow it. So it's a harbinger of doom that we might be looking at some bad crap next year, next season. Yeah. Which I'm sure Francisco's like, thank God I took that deal.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I mean, like, also when you look at when you look at the number of shortstops that are hitting free agency next year, I think he's, there's a reason why he is where he is. You know what I mean? I think it was an educated guess about, like, this is going to be your best shot, like, not next year, this year, like, this is going to be it, like Tatis, like there's the high water mark, and we know we can probably beat that, by 1 million, which they did. So it's like, we are in store for some weird times. I keep going back to that, though, like the knowledge of people's contracts and how much money people are making. I just don't see that as helpful. Reportedly the conflict between McNeil and Lindor might have had something to do with, McNeil being like, oh, you're not playing like the $341 million man, or you're not worth the money or whatever. Like, it's got to be such a weird thing. Like, knowing what somebody else makes just seems so bad I know, like in radio, like we have, I feel like my life is one perpetual contract negotiation, and it's exhausting. And part of the reason it's exhausting is because, you don't know, but you kind of know what other people are making. And anytime you find out what someone else is making, it puts a ton of pressure on your situation and their situation. Like, perfect example. Say I'm programming a station. Morning shows make the most. Like they just do it. Like I can be on in the afternoon, outperforming the morning show, doing 10 times the work that the morning guy is, and they will be making 10 times the money I do. It just works that way. And so like you can have a morning show that's not pulling their weight and a guy or someone else within the radio station having a sense that they're making that much and being like, if you're paying, like I've seen people walk because they found out what other people were getting paid. They're like, I'm doing all this and you're paying that guy or that girl that, and this is what you're offering me. Take a leap. I'm not like, that's insulting. I can't walk into this building knowing they're getting paid for doing what they're doing and you're offering me this. I'm out. Like, so these are the rare circumstances where people find out about each other's salaries, and that's, you're really told you got to keep quiet on all your contract negotiations. This is between us. Like, we can't have it getting out how much we're paying you or how much we're offering you. Like it's shrouded in secrecy. And I just don't understand why, like, there isn't at least some sort of, secrecy involved in the baseball negotiations, because it makes it really uncomfortable and unproductive for all sorts of people. You have the pressure of getting the big contract and then performing. And then you got a guy like Conforto, who's like, okay, they paid Francisco $340 million. This is my walk year. I got to really, really be good. And everybody's talking about it and everybody knows. And like, there's, $350 million on the line here. And like, oh man, I'm striking out. And like, there's just no way that stuff can't get into your head and mess with you as you play, as you do what you do. It doesn't matter how professional you are. I just think it's almost unavoidable. I never understand why these negotiations are so open book. As we were, for the fact that we were hearing about which offer was best and final on the Francisco Lindor deal, like it was insane. And it does not, as the rest of the world is kind of trying to figure out how they're going to make a living in the post-COVID situation. I knew a lot of people that got very upset about it. A lot of people that got very upset about Francisco Lindor's offered this much. Well, I can't watch baseball anymore. He's turning that down. Come on, people are starving. That's enough to solve world hunger. Contract negotiations make fans walk away from baseball too when you find out what sort of money is involved. Not me, but I've seen it happen. So it's always so strange to me that this money is talked about and it's become part of the media circus around baseball. I just don't see it as being healthy or good for anyone. Is there some sort of legal prerequisite that these dealings must be public?
No, I don't know if there's a legal prerequisite or not, or whether it is, but culturally throughout the history of sports, it has always been a public notice type of thing where it's common knowledge. It's part of the common discussion about a team. Partially, I believe, because of the public nature of what comparatively teams have to go through. They do the same thing when it comes to contract negotiations of now network deals, broadcasting deals, etc. And I agree with you. It's an ugly aspect of it, but there's a transparency aspect of it that I believe has some play into it somehow, some way, because it has always existed that way. People knew what Babe Ruth was making. It was touted. It was reported. What the teams go through in terms of their deals back and forth, in terms of trades, etc. The fact that say a league like the NHL has an actual salary cap, so those numbers are really, really, really determinative and are really watched and discriminated through because of the fact that they have to do with an actual cap, are one thing. But there's just always been this. I wouldn't call it openness and outwardness. I think it's more of a transparency in terms of these are what the expenses are, these are what the costs are, and Certainly I am not spending Steve Cohn's money, but it comes into play in comparative situations when, as you said, Tatis got a deal, and all of his numbers and everything, and his age and everything were all determinative in terms of what he was going to be getting, and that number was the exact reference point to Francisco Lindor and what he was getting. So it was a bar that was set, and it's a public bar that's set. The same thing that will happen in this upcoming offseason when Trevor Story or Seager or these other comparative players of comparative skill levels will be coming up for free agency or up for contracts.
I wonder if someone like Conforto is just like, JD, you get it together at third base, because if they've got to pay for Chris Bryant, I'm not getting paid the way I want to get paid.
Very, very, very possibly, and if it literally has turned into such a high stakes kind of thing, the motives and modus operandi of agents, say like Scott Boras, and the way that he's built up his reputation over all these years with the clients that he has had to do with those things. He literally has a book produced of his players that when they go up now for, say, a contract negotiation or as a free agent, et cetera, they like a book is dropped on the desk of the general manager, and it's every statistical bit of information produced to the hilt of that player. And the reason that Boras produces it that way is that he's touting, the benefits and every positive, et cetera, of that player that he's now representing. I'm not particularly a Boras fan in terms of how high-handed some of his dealings and his reactions would be, but Conforto is a perfect example. Conforto is a Met. He came up through the system. He loves playing in New York, the biggest market there is. Mm-hmm. Whatever the Mets wind up offering Conforto in negotiations, and maybe those negotiations are going on right now. We don't know. But whatever it winds up being, the circumstances of Conforto, where he wants to play, how he wants to play, whether he's being rewarded in comparison to other players of his ilk and level, mm-hmm. all of that's gonna come into play, and it's done in a very open, transparent way, because just as their stats are comparative, just in terms of their stats, and every single little thing that they've done is listed somehow as a ranking between all the players. The same way is their compensation. So I agree with you totally that it's an ugly-ish, dirty-ish aspect of how the business is run, but maybe the transparency has some degree of benefit, some degree of reliability.
It's interesting that you say, because I'd heard that about Scott Boras too, that he has like a book made, like he has a book made, and he sends a copy of that book to anybody that might be in the market for one of his players, and plenty that are not. And it's interesting that it's in this digital era, it's a physical book, which I have heard, and it's interesting because like I program radio stations, and people would send me compact discs. I'm like, this is not the 90s, you freaking eco-terrorists. Send me an email, send me a link, and don't you dare clog up my inbox with one of those pesky MP3s. If you don't have this streaming somewhere, I'm out. I tell you, out. But there were instances, like it's just like, I send you a CD, big deal, I don't care. I was famous in the building for having boxes and boxes and boxes of unopened compact discs. And like anytime an intern came in, or anytime a promotions kid, they're like, what's that? I'm like, music, you want some? Like, you don't want it? I'm like, no, what, I have absolutely no use for a compact disc anymore. I just don't. However, on the two occasions where I have had compact discs, I remember I was like, someone called me. They're like, did you get the CD I sent you? I'm like, you could just say, this could have been an email, dude. I don't need a phone call, and I certainly don't need an envelope with an archaic piece of plastic in it. But like, I set the CD on my desk, and it just sat there looking at me for a couple days. And then I popped it in when I had nothing else. And I listened to it, and I wound up adding the record because it wound up it did well. I wasn't the only one who added the record, but I probably wouldn't have considered it had it not just been sitting there going, you should check me out. You should check me out. Every time I sat down at my desk. And by the same token, another band it had sent me a CD, and I was like, okay, I like this band. They're actually sort of buddies of mine, and I popped it in the CD player in my car because it just hit me at the right time, and it came on, and I rode around listening to nothing but that CD for I don't know, probably about 6 months. And it became one of my favorite albums. So 9 times out of 10, that won't happen. But just having that, it says to me how canny Boris is, that he has a hard copy book printed up so it can sit there on your desk being like, this guy's worth money. This guy's worth money. Every time you sit down, it's one of those things, having a physical representation of your player on someone's desk is going to put you ahead of the game.
Or a comparative way of looking at it is when players go up for arbitration. Any player that has not received an arbitration offer and now literally goes to arbitration, meaning they're going in front of a jurist who is now going to listen to both sides. So you got management of the team that are going to present every single, specific detail and spec and every single thing about the player to not justify giving him the attainable number that he's looking for in arbitration, as well as the player giving a very positive review of these are my stats. These are my stats in comparison to my the other players, etc. So if you've ever seen how it eventually goes for arbitration, it's a very, very interesting thing because it's literally it's a courtroom battle of management and the player's representative trying to show what the benefit of that player is and why he's deserving of that, say, arbitration figure that they didn't agree to before. Most arbitrations they actually agree upon. The ownership will offer something. Players representative will offer something. They'll meet somewhere in the middle and they'll accept arbitration. It has been infrequent and not nearly as happening frequently of a player going through the arbitration process. And when it does, it's brutal. It's it's not a divorce proceeding, but it's a hardcore. Yeah, this is what you're worth. This is what you do. Yeah. kind of review. Yeah,
it's your opinion versus another person's opinion. That's sadly that's what every radio contract negotiation is like. Well, look at these numbers. Yeah, but you know what? The new Chili Peppers record came out then, and people seem to like that a lot. So it's less to do with you and more to do with Red Hot Chili Peppers, or the other day part that came on before you. Boy, they sure are popular. Do you think you were the benefit of them? No. I think I've been pulling up the rest of the station, and you're lucky. I'm the high bar that makes the rest of the water. I'm setting the bar. And so that's a hideously unpleasant process, and that is exactly what every single radio contract negotiation is like. We think you're worth this much. We're going to gaslight you into taking some offer and make you feel lucky for it. No, you're not. Bite me. I've got 20 other options out there. Really? Show me one. Do you have one written down on paper? No? Then we're not having that conversation yet. This is what the offer is. It's an ugly process, and it's no fun for anyone to go through. I mean, significantly more fun when you wind up with millions of dollars as a professional baseball player at the end of it. When you're, when it's a difference between 5 and 10 million, it's a lot more fun than when it's the difference between, being able not having to drive an O2 with a tape deck in it anymore, and maybe being able to get yourself a Kia.
Well, so Francisco Lindor, through all of this, and now being in New York in the biggest fishbowl possible, with the expectation and anticipation that he's going to fulfill that contract to the top and bring us championships and everything like that. Okay, the opening volley of him coming in and stumbling out at the gate. There are many other examples of other players that have stumbled out of the gate in New York and have either salvaged themselves and gone on to Hall of Fame careers. And I'm intrigued, and I'm very, very happy to see him get off the schneid this past week.
Yeah,
and it looks to me like he can now maybe relax a little bit, and not relax meaning be lethargic or laid back. I'm talking about relaxing to play in your comfort level, play in your zone with confidence, and let's push everybody through.
Well, also know that you're not broken. Know that because clearly the guy can hit, but if you go through a skid like that, like he has, which I don't think was the biggest offer he's ever had in his career, but it was getting pretty close. It's got to factor in. We're like, I'm sucking. And you hear stories of people just getting the big contract and never really living up to it, and that's got to go through your mind. So the fact that he was able to hit and then hit kind of consistently, he's been very helpful for 2 straight games now. And he was offensively, he's been very helpful for 2 straight games. So that has to be that just has to be a huge weight off of his back to where he can be like, all right, it's not all for nothing. But it's got to be so different for him, man. Like he gets booed, he can't hit, and then he gets into a fight. It was smooth sailing in Cleveland for the last decade, and now I come here, people hate me, they punch me. I've got to make up weird lies to the press about various rodents in a tunnel, so nobody buys that I'm Mr. Smile anymore. They think I'm Mr. Lies a lot, So it's just he had the reputation as being the greatest guy ever. And that's I think people still love him and everything, but it's all of a sudden it's a very different story.
Welcome to New York. Welcome to the fishbowl. And a parallel course at the same time, Freddie Freeman, first baseman for the Atlanta Braves, is going. I believe he's on an 0-28 right now. He's a fantastic player. He's the rock on their team. And okay, he's going through a really crappy length of time. It happens. Okay, let's all move forward. The Mets traditionally, historically, their season has been determined by how well they play in June and how well they play in August, and that's not meaning that you forget about July and forget about September. But just historically watching the team, if they have a bad June and a bad August, they've trailed the Braves and lost 14 seasons in a row where the Braves won the division. And a lot of it had to do with whether they had a really good, strong record in June and August. So I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch passionately how they do now in May, how they do in each of these upcoming series. But I want to see them put together a strong June, and leading up to the All-Star break in mid-season in July. And I want to see them take over this division in August. I want them just to have such a strong August that it's a determinative factor in how their season's going to go.
No, I don't feel like we've seen. People would argue that the 2015 team was a dominant team. I love what happened in 2015. It's, obviously, except for how it ended, it was, it was a great story. But, that it's not, it wasn't that surefire dominant thing that you saw. And I always, I paid close attention to the Astros, but, even before the cheating thing, they were there were Dodger fans that were friends of mine that said the Astros were just savages. They just came for us. They just, whether it was on the field or behind the plate, they just came for us and we couldn't live up to it. We were just completely overmatched. And, I can't remember the last time I felt like the Mets were that team where they were a dominant force to be reckoned with. You know, like they've always been, you know, we've had stretches like, oh crap, they're really good. But you know, and I guess I always go back to teams like the Cardinals, who, by the way, that was an amazing thing. That really made me think, you know, the Cardinals, who I always picture as just being this surefire, hard as nails, really tough, you know, to crack team. Like I think they have a culture of playing that hard, aggressive baseball that's really difficult for other teams to keep up to or catch up with, and it just they keep you off balance, and whether it's with a long ball or the small ball, they're going to find a way to beat you, and they're going to do it, and you're going to be left going, what just happened? You know, like, but it was amazing to watch how that series with the Cardinals ended, where it's just like, you know, Quattlebaum came in, you know, and the joke was like, he said, just don't swing at anything. We'll be fine. Like, they're just going to walk you all. Like, that was the joke. Like, we were the beneficiary of some truly terrible pitching. And I think, like, I'm getting the impression right now that all over Major League Baseball, there is this whole... I said the greatest tweet I saw when we won a game the other day was like, we love it when the Mets, who may or may not be good, win baseball games. Like, you can't tell. We're not sure yet. Are we good? I think we are. We've won a couple games, but also, like, we've really sucked recently. We've done some horrible, embarrassing things recently. But I think it's kind of like that all over Major League Baseball at the moment. I mean, the East is obviously, you know, unbelievably competitive, but also, like, the number of baseballs that have been hit this year that could have been home runs that weren't after they deadened the balls a little bit, and the number of strikeouts, you know, offensively, the entire all of Major League Baseball is struggling. And I think, you know, and it's so weird to me that they're just like, well, we're going to deaden the balls so they don't go as far, so that not as many are hit out of the park, and then pitchers start just destroying people. And they're like, well, we're going to move the mound back. I'm like, well, deaden the ball or move the mound. Why, you know, like just leave it the way it was. Seemed to be okay. You know, like it was fun, exciting baseball. Like it was weird. So like they take away the advantage that hitters have by deadening the ball. And then everybody, you know, like you've got all these crazy dominant pitchers. And now they're talking about moving the mound back. I was like, or make the ball hittable again, you know, like make it go the distance. You know, like go with the ball that we have been using. I don't know. But it's an interesting predicament where it seems like teams that were that surefire dominant thing, nobody really knows. Like the Dodgers off to an unbelievable hot start, and now they totally suck. You know, they can't. You know, I didn't see how the game ended today for them, but like they looked like they were going to win it all from the get go, and then they really started not being able to tie it together. And I feel, and the same with. Sorry, I'm going on a little bit about this, but it's just like it seems like everybody has that big question mark in their mind that they don't usually have by this point this year. Like, do we suck? I can't tell. Are we good? Maybe we are. And same with the Cardinals, where a really good Cardinal fan friend of mine, I was like, oh man, you guys are so good. He's like, yeah, we're going to lose 3 in a row. Like, it's going to suck. Like, he was like, this season we're so inconsistent. And I feel like everyone's saying about that about their teams right now.
Yeah. There's some very interesting things watching the other teams and how they're doing. And the Dodgers are a very, very good example. You know, they got manhandled by the Cubs in a previous series just last week. They did very well today, but you know, you talk to Dodger fans and they're incredibly critical of the players. They're incredibly critical of Roberts and his management style and everything. It really is translatable, you know, from team to team to team, of how passionate, you know, they're followed and what they're doing. Mets, for example, or the NL East, it really looks like the teams are just gonna beat the crap out of each other the whole year. So it's going to be very, very interesting of obviously how they play against each other. But I'm I'm intrigued to see how we play against legitimate teams, how we fare against other teams. So okay, great. We have a chance to sweep the Diamondbacks as of tomorrow with Jacob going. Great. That actually sounds really good. Coming up after that, we've got 2 games against the Orioles, who've actually been really good. We got a couple of games against Tampa Bay.
Do we know who's pitching against Matt Harvey yet?
It certainly looks like Matt Harvey is gonna pitch a game at Citi Field, and I don't know because the way the Mets are handling their five starters, actually quote unquote 6 starters in terms of bouncing back and forth with people. I'm not totally sure. It almost to me doesn't matter who Harvey's going to face. It's more important that Harvey's going to pitch against the Mets in Citi Field,
Citi
and
Field.
I hope he gets the greatest standing ovation when he walks in.
Me too. Yeah, no, I mean, who knows what? Look, that guy's name was definitely mud in New York for a while. I think it went past his struggles as a pitcher, but it came down to really sort of like you're not showing up, like you're out partying, you're out, so you're not taking this seriously. I think was the vibe, but I that water is everybody wishes that guy well because he was the guy that got us there. He was. There's no two ways about it. So. Yeah, no, I hope he gets the hugest standing ovation ever. Hey, speaking of standing ovation. One thing I often stand and clap for is excellent food. You are apparently, for Mother's Day, preparing chicken and waffles. Now, that sounds delicious in and of itself. But during the week, you texted me pictures of your smoker. In fact, you were cleaning out your smoker, or getting your smoker ready for Mother's Day, right as we were starting to turn a losing streak around. No, it was right as Lindor hit his home run, I think. You're like, hey, look at my smoker, crack. I was like, oh, you're only smoking from here on in. This will be the only mode of cooking that you employ until Lindor, goes cold to the plate again. But then it made me think, you're making chicken and waffles, but you're smoking something at the same time. Well, go on.
No. To be honest, I superseded my wife. My wife's original suggestion was making chicken and waffles for the roughly 15 people that we have coming over tomorrow for Mother's Day. Most of which who are teacher, like my wife runs a school, runs a preschool, and her teachers, who are all her great friends, obviously were all mothers and everything. So we decided to have them over at our house to do it. And her original suggestion was chicken and waffles, but I pulled an audible on her and I said, you know what? I said, a couple of weeks ago we had such success and loved how the tri-tips came out. I'm literally bringing it back to I'm gonna smoke a couple of 4 tri-tips that I have marinating right now that look awesome. I'm also gonna do some chicken, specifically thighs. I have those marinating right now.
Dude, chicken thighs are chicken thighs are my new favorite chicken. I don't know why because I always cook chicken breast and chicken wings and drumsticks and things of that nature, but chicken thighs are just, I guess it's because they're a little bit fattier. They're just they're tasty. They cook really well, and you can have them skinless and boneless, and they're still really juicy and tender. It's not like chicken breast, which has a tendency to dry out and get a little tough.
Yeah, I'm not a chicken breast. I'm not a white meat fan at all. I love the dark meat. I love thighs. I love the thighs with the bone in terms of cooking with them, because it does even add that extra element. So yeah, I've actually sent you a couple of pictures. I've got the smoker and the Weber outside. I ran some smoke and everything through them yesterday just to get them kind of cleaned up, because I hadn't had the chance to use them in a little while. And man, I'm gonna spend my time sitting outside cooking up a whole mess while listening to or watching DeGrom pitch. This is gonna be a great Mother's Day.
Yeah, no. That's some good stuff. So let me ask you this: are you smoking or grilling the chicken?
Both. What my plan is to
please describe in detail how you're going to prepare the chicken. It's currently marinating in what?
It's actually currently marinating in an interesting marinade that I've tried before, which is a mixture of olive oil, white vinegar, sugar, and yours and my favorite ingredient, paprika.
Hungarian paprika.
Hungarian paprika. So I've got them marinating overnight in that mixture. The vinegar does a great thing in terms of marinating chicken for a long period of time, because obviously, you know, vinegar has that bitterness to it, but it works really, really well with the moisture of the chicken. So what I'm doing is marinating it in olive oil, white vinegar, sugar, and paprika. What I'll do is I will start them on the I'm going to start them on the smoker at a fairly low temperature and let them sit for a while. The tri-tips, because I've got so many people coming over, I'm probably going to be sitting out there for a while doing them. They're marinating right now with a dry rub that I did previously, but this opportunity to use them, both the barbecue and the smoker, I'm going to cook them at a pretty low temperature. And then I'm gonna sear them on the barbecue to finish them off while everything else goes. So
that is the only way, and it's because that's all I know how to do. But like that's the only way. Like I'll slow cook it and then flame on to get the crust at the end. Like you get a nice crust, but you really get a nice crust. Ooh, you probably do this already, but I find, and I don't know what it is, and I'm not sure what the science of this is, but a quick butter bath before you get them on the flames attracts the right kind of flame, meaning it's not going to burn the fat. It's going to it'll get a really good char on it, and it seems to go for the butter rather than the fat of the meat. I don't know. It seems to work out infinitely better when I do that reverse sear at the end after a bit of a butter bath.
Yeah, I like having either an oil, an olive oil, or a butter on the side, and either, you know, just kind of mopping it on a little bit, or a dip just before it goes to the heavy flame, it goes to the actual flame, because it adds such a great element of a crusting basically, and the stuff that I did set up for the marinade, for the dry rub, etc. A lot of kosher salt really rubbed into the tips. I think it's going to be really, really nice.
Do you always go kosher salt with the dry rub? Do you ever go plain salt? Because the one thing about, like, I always do kosher salt because that's what everything says. And I think I made my own rub once with table salt, and it wasn't bad. But there's something about, like, I always go back and forth because the kosher salt is great, but you wind up with these, you know, larger pieces of salt on it, and I always kind of feel as though you get a slightly more even ratio of everything that you're doing when you don't go kosher salt, when everything is the same sort of size of grain.
I like the larger kosher salt, and I like having it on the meat for a long period of time, because even as large as it is, and you've rubbed it in there, it's over time and interacting with the meat, it's breaking down and tenderizing the meat. So like those large flakes of salt, they're not going to be large flakes after they've broken down quite a bit. They're actually intermingling and working the meat, and it's a great tenderizing. It works in such great conjunction with the dry rub elements that you're also adding, because as that meat is now tenderizing, it's drawing all that into the meat. So the salt is a great, it's as an additive, it's one thing, but it instigates the meat. That's why you're leaving it for that amount of time with it. That's why you're tenderizing and going through the process with it. So table salt, being the very small little iodized salt, it's fine. I'm just a particular fan of the larger kosher salt, the Himalayan sea, the salts and everything. They do a really nice job.
Yeah, no. I've never had a problem with it, but I always feel like I get a better, a more effective mix of the salt, pepper, garlic thing that I like to go with if I use table salt, but I never do. So thank you for explaining to me why we go kosher salt. Well, Mother's Day at your place sounds great. You know what we need to do? We need to get into writing this stuff down. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. That sounds fantastic.
Well, you know what? They just started this past weekend. Southwest Airlines finally has reinstated direct flights between Vegas and Palm Springs as a regular route. Which, when I first moved here, like 15 years ago, back in the late 2000s, there were regular flights between Palm Springs and Vegas, which is a natural, and they stopped doing it for the longest time. So as of this weekend, there are multiple direct flights back and forth between Palm Springs and Vegas.
Probably about $30, right? Like
$80.
Yeah,
$80. Yeah, from what I saw. And Michelle and I have already started saying, let's plan a weekend in the next couple of weeks to go up to Vegas and break out a little bit.
Oh, that sounds good. Well, we look forward to we really need to do. We really need to. Besides doing one of these in person, that would be fantastic. But what we really need to do is we need to start writing some of these recipes down, so we can present them to our tens of listeners.
So you mean, do we need to have an associated website that it goes along with the Band's Barbecue and Baseball website?
Now you're just talking. No, that's just crazy talk. That sounds much too like.
That sounds like work.
Yeah, that sounds like a major league pain in the ass.
All right. How are we going to hire some interns to put that together?
I don't know. I will give you $1. Well, happy Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers.